everybody. We are live here on Brain Chat with Dr. Robert Melillo. Dr. Melillo, thanks so much for being on Brain Chat again.
Ryan, it's always good to be with you, buddy.
Yes, sir. And tonight we're going to be talking about Dr. Melillo is the man of many talents. He's authored several books, co-founder of Brain Balance Centers. He's the president of SNA Biotech, working on some digital therapeutics for brain health. And so tonight we're going to be talking about his new book, Einstein's Desk, that he co-authored with his brother, Dominic Melillo.
Yes, here it is.
Yes, sir. I love the title and the cover page. And then we're also going to be talking about brain health and immune function. If you follow Dr. Melillo's page, he's been posting some really great research articles and information on the role that brain asymmetry can play in immune responses. So I'm going to let him take it away, and thank you again so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's a crazy time, obviously. We're in the middle of this crisis. And, there's a lot of things, a lot of thoughts that come to my head during this time. One is that, from a personal standpoint, I'm trying to encourage people that, this is like forced downtime. And most people, if you're not locked in your house, you're going to be soon. And so what do you do about that? What do you do during this time? Do you just sit back and feel afraid? Do you freak out, because maybe you're losing out on a lot of money and you're worried if you're going to lose your practice or your business or whatever? And that is the natural instinct of what to do, right? Your right brain is always going to draw you towards what you fear, what you're afraid of, and painting worst case scenarios in your brain. But you have to, during this time, make a conscious effort to do the opposite, to focus on your future, to focus on your goals, to focus on what you want to happen when you come back. And if you can take this time to really write, I don't think people understand the power of writing goals, of writing a vision of what you want, and really being very specific. I recently put up, about a month and a half ago, I did a live workshop for people on a goal setting and life planning workshop that I do every year. At the end of the year, I go through about a 2-week process where I create my plan for my year coming up. And everything that I've done over the past really 25 years has come from that plan. And I've evolved it and perfected it. And I put that plan, and we did a workshop and I recorded it. And it's a 3-hour workshop where I literally lead people through creating a plan. And so doing something like that, like really sitting down and envisioning it, really thinking that the law of attraction of how you actually make things work, taking control of the situation, I think you can come out of this stronger than ever, or, you can come out weaker than you were before. And wounded. And I think most people should choose the other. And the other thing about that is that, when we talk about the immune system and the brain, most people, we've discussed it, we know in functional neurology, but virtually nobody else knows this. And that even most people in functional medicine don't know this, that the brain actually is the master regulator of the immune system, that it is the controller, especially of the adaptive immune system. And kind of the adaptive immune system came along in parallel with the evolution of the human brain. The whole complement of antibodies came along only in mammals, right? So it came along that way. And that the two hemispheres, like everything else, regulate differently the immune system. And the left hemisphere, and as you said, I put up a couple of papers. There's 30 years of really good research on this. I mean, really solid research, and it's always been consistently the same, that whether it's in mouse models where they create lesions in the brain, or whether it's in human models where they really look at activation and brain imaging, it's always shown the same thing, that the left hemisphere activates the immune system, that it increases the responsiveness of T cells and probably B cells as well. But absolutely with cellular immunity, it absolutely increases it. And it, makes the immune system more sensitive, and it activates the immune attack, and that the right hemisphere basically stops the attack or suppresses the immune system or keeps the immune system in bay so that it just doesn't come out at any time for no reason, right? So it's kind of like the braking mechanism, the right brain, which is what it does for almost everything in behavior. In human behavior, the right brain is the braking mechanism. So, understanding that, and the left brain is also about goal setting. It's about reward reinforced behavior. It's about creating habits. It's about creating motivation and belief. So in setting goals and focusing on goals and focusing on, your belief that you can achieve those goals and being able to stick with it. This is all called the science of self-regulation, and it's really goal setting. And it's a left brain, left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex that actually does that. It also helps you to create habits around those goals. But in the interim, what it also does is that activates the immune system. And so what we know is that, things like laughing, funny movies, happy music, doing positive things are really more about activating the left brain and the immune system. Things like using red around you, red in your environment, and doing things like music in the right ear or stimulating the right side of your body. So all these different things. So it works together. So, being positive, listening to positive messages, doing things, setting goals, forcing yourself, creating action steps and sequences of action steps. All of this is going to make you come out of this stronger than ever, but it's also really one of the best ways to stimulate your immune system. And when we're dealing with viruses, other than your immune system and your brain, which regulates it, there's no medication. There's not anything else out there yet. There's no antivirals yet that are doing that. So obviously supplements, vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, and the other things that we all know of, glutathione. But you're really regulating your brain and stimulating your brain is probably the single most important thing you can do.
100%. And you mentioned the prefrontal cortex, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. In times of stress, the research has really shown that that's one of the first areas that's so heavily attacked by the stress response. And that area of the brain can start to shut down. So trying to avoid stress, which is difficult at times, is one of the most important things for your brain.
Absolutely. And, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is probably one of the most highly evolved, where really our higher level cognitive skills. On the left side of the brain, we're talking about, that's Broca's area, right? So we're talking about speech. We're talking about language. We're talking about reading. We're talking about math. We're talking about doing sequential calculations, working memory, the highest levels of what we do with cognitive skills. And on the right side of the brain, similarly, looking at nonverbal communication, reading emotions on other people and looking at other people's intents and doing all of those things, and attention and planning and organizing and being able to inhibit all of the other distractions and all of the other goals that could come into our head, right? So the left brain is about focusing on a goal. The right brain's about inhibiting all those other goals. We come out and we say, okay, I want to lose 5 pounds, and we're focused on that. And then all of a sudden I see a chocolate cake and I go, well, I want to eat that chocolate cake. That's my new goal. Right? And now you go to that, and then you have a goal and say, well, I see a beer over there, and now I want the beer. Your right brain's inhibiting the chocolate cake and the beer, while the left brain is focused on, I want to lose 5 pounds, right? So they work in sync. It's always about them both working together all the time. All areas of the brain are always working, but it's that they do different things and they regulate different things. And so because of that, those areas of the brain are the most expensive, right? Energetically, they're the ones that evolve the last. They're the ones that develop the last in a child. And they're the most expensive energetically. So what happens when, you have a crisis, when you have a crisis outside or you have a crisis in your body? What's going to happen is the ones that are going to suffer first are the ones that are most expensive. So when you're under stress, when you have reduced blood flow to your brain, when you have increased inflammation, and increased inflammation, especially what we call sickness behavior, right? It increases in interleukin-6 and other inflammatory cytokines. We know that what that does is it goes and it actually dampens, especially that left brain activity. and it dampens it down, and it has an evolutionary purpose for it, meaning that, you know, when you're sick, you know, you have a virus or something, you feel like crap, you don't want to be around people, you become asocial, you know, feel withdrawn, you don't really get pleasure from smell or from food, your hedonistic behavior, you know, you really don't get a lot of pleasure or enjoyment out of things, so you don't really want to do anything. You want to just stay away from people, which is a way of protecting other people and yourself, right? It's limiting. It's basically the way that we self-quarantine, but it's also what we look at as depression behavior, right? That's depression. So what happens is that sickness behavior and cytokines literally dampen that left brain activity. They dampen the whole prefrontal cortex, but as you said, those areas that are, you know, most evolved, and especially work against your ability to set goals or feel motivated to go after goals or believe that you can stick with it, you know, self-regulation and to form habits. So what happens is a lot of people are walking around with those cytokines in them all the time because they're always inflamed, or they have food sensitivities, or they have an overactive left brain, which, you know, means that they're constantly generating these things, or their increased sympathetic response is generating these inflammatory responses. And it just is completely, you know, counterproductive to, you know, what we want to do and behavior. And a lot of people are feeling that all the time. I had one time I was doing a lecture and I was explaining this mechanism, and I had a young doctor, a female, and she said to me, wow, you just explained something to me for the first time. She said, my whole life I've tried to exercise and I wanted to get on a diet and exercise routine, and I've never been able to do it. I've never been able to stick to anything like that. And she said, and I just, out of no reason, I just went on a gluten-free, dairy-free diet. And I just went on it. And all of a sudden, it was easy for me to stick to goals. It was like effortless, like for me to go to the gym every day and to stick on a diet. And she said, and I didn't understand it, like, why all of a sudden, what did gluten or casein have to do with me being able to like stick to goals? It was exactly that mechanism.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, and what you just explained, how the left brain kind of keeps its eye on the goal, the right brain inhibits all the other unwanted things to pull you away from that goal. I've never heard it explained that way, so that was
Well,
my little note I took.
that's exactly how it works on the basal ganglia, right? So when you look at all human behavior, right, all human behavior can come down to basically those frontal striatal, or the what we call cortical striatal thalamocortical networks, meaning that the basal ganglia and the prefrontal cortex really regulate most of all human behavior in some combination. And there's 5 primary loops. And what we know is that there's a direct and indirect pathway. The direct pathway activates things. So it activates motivation in the anterior cingulate. It activates executive function and cognitions in the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex. It activates social behavior in the orbital frontal cortex. It activates saccadic eye movements and attention direction with the frontal eye fields. And it activates motor activity with the premotor cortex. The right hemisphere through, and that's the direct pathway, activates it. The indirect pathway is inhibitory to those things. So, and the left and right hemisphere play a role in that, so that the right hemisphere has a specific role in the direct pathway or the indirect pathway, and what we call the hyperdirect pathway, through it activates the inhibition. The left hemisphere activates the direct pathway more. So we choose an action, we have a goal, we have a specific behavior and an outcome and a prediction and a simulation that the left brain does. And then it chooses the combination of behaviors and the combination of those 5 networks, and it activates the direct pathway, which then activates the thalamus to activate the brain, which initiates all that behavior. In the interim, all the other behaviors, all the other actions, all the other movements that we could be doing are being inhibited by the right brain and the indirect pathway, so that we don't have spontaneous movement and choreiform movement, or we don't have spontaneous tics, or we don't have emotional outbursts, or we don't have obsessive behavior where we're constantly checking on things or washing our hands over and over. So all of that is being suppressed continually by the right brain. And then the left brain chooses a specific action and behavior. And then when that behavior is done, the right brain through the indirect pathway shuts it off. And then we go on to the next behavior. And that's the way it works. And that's the way it works also with the immune system, essentially.
Oh man, I love it. What and what you said earlier too, just about writing down goals. You know, I heard you speak, and then our good friend Kyle, he kind of got on me, and he's like, you need to start writing stuff down every day. So ever since I think it was like 2 years ago, I've been writing down my goals every day. But I got derailed because of the situation we're going through right now in the world. I was training for two different races, one of which I was going to run with my little brother, and then the other I was going to run with a really good friend that I was really excited about. Both got canceled. I started to, my mind's going everywhere. Our son's out of school. We're both still working. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing, how we can manage all these situations. I'm getting depressed because we don't get to run in these fun races anymore. I stopped writing everything down. I just went into panic mode. But these are the times when you have to write down, everything.
Exactly. That's the point, Ryan. At the time when things are most difficult and most challenging, that's when you have to really write, because that's the only way. You have to actively, you can't have a negative and positive thought in your head at the same time. Your right brain is your default mechanism, which is always looking to withdraw. It's always looking for danger and for negativity to protect us. It's always engaging automatically. You don't have to do anything. It's subconscious. So if you do nothing, you're going to be drawn to what you're afraid of, right? And it paralyzes you. You have to actively inhibit that, and you have to actively inhibit it by actively consciously engaging your left brain and by setting specific goals. And that shuts down the negativity. And then one of the things I show people is how to automate that, so that every day when you wake up, you have a calendar or schedule, so that every day, all day, everything you do is focusing you specifically on your goals. And it automatically keeps all those negative thoughts and those fears and those doubts away, which is something that, all of us have. I mean, it's amazing. I ask, groups of doctors all the time, how many people really don't believe that they're worthy, or that they really don't think that they're good enough. And it's 90% of a class will raise their hand in a group of, doctors, MDs, PhDs, DCs. And it's amazing. So we have to fight that. You have to do something. And during the most difficult times is when you have to do it most. It's like when you're feeling your worst and tired, if you're fatigued and you're feeling fatigue and pain, you have to actually exercise more. You don't sit back and rest during those times.
Yeah, as amazing and as beautiful as our brains are, it's so frustrating that it defaults into the negative pathways.
It does. It defaults into fear. It defaults into sadness and withdrawal. That's what it does. If we don't do anything about it, that's what will happen. Unless we're, and unless we have a very, very active and very involved right brain, which can kind of suppress that and go to creativity, right?
Right. So. I love it. Well, I mean, thank you so much for that information. And, you've done so much amazing work with brains in the past. I can't remember when I first started learning from you. It's been several years, but the work that you've been doing and you continue to do is amazing. Can you talk a little bit about the book that you and your brother wrote? Because it's a little bit different from the books that you've written in the past.
Yeah, well, speaking of creativity and stimulating the left brain, I'm always looking at ways of trying to raise awareness and get this message out there. This message that we've had, that I've been out there along with others, but I've been one of the first really looking at the message of functional neurology in the brain and chiropractic and all of the things that work together. You're fighting against mainstream medicine, you're fighting against mainstream psychology, you're fighting against mainstream education. And even though most of those systems are, really old, outdated, and that we have tools that are way beyond that, they're known, right? They're what's out there. So, when you want to change something, it takes a number of things. You really have to be persistent. You have to not give up. And you have to try to get as many people recruited into this, because to create a big vision, it's a group, right? It's a group effort. It has to be a group vision. It has to be shared. The more people share in a vision, the more likely it is to come about. So, over the past 10 years, especially with Brain Balance and with my books and with my papers, research, I've done so many TV shows and radio shows, and it's really more about trying to expand that group, to create a vision and do it in multiple ways, we live in a multimedia world. So, just a research paper is going to reach a certain amount of audience. A textbook is going to reach an audience. A mainstream book like Disconnected Kids, which now has sold, I think, 500,000 books worldwide. And it's one of the best-selling books of all time in that area. And I think it's just been into 11 languages now. It just came out in Spanish.
Yeah.
So in Japanese, and it's coming out in Turkish soon. So that's one way to reach an audience, and that's big, right? And, Brain Balance, we've worked with over 40,000 families in the last 10 years. It's big. It's a big impact. Between those two things alone and teaching doctors, reaching parents, we're into the millions of people that have been affected directly or indirectly, but that's not enough. So, a few years ago, my wife and I did a TV show. We did a radio show, we did a TV show, we did a talk show, and then we did a web series, because obviously we're in a visual world. We're in an entertainment type world where, it needs to be engaging and entertaining for many people. And if you can educate people and entertain them at the same time, that's a big deal, right? So this project was about, it was kind of really a passion, personal project. I'll tell you the story behind it in a moment, but it was really also about getting this message of functional neurology out there in a whole different medium, in a whole different kind of book, which was really entertaining because it's a great story. I mean, it's a incredibly exciting story. It really should be made into a movie because it's really an awesome story, but it's fun, it's entertaining, but we're also giving a lot of brain science and a lot of physics, and really a lot of mixing of that together, as well as it's a historical fiction. 90% of this book is true, or it's based on facts that very probably are true, right? My mother-in-law read it, and she was talking to me, and she was like, well, did that really happen? The Philadelphia experiment? I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of out there. People have affidavits that sign that it happened, and, all the things that we have in it are real people, real historical events. You're going to learn things about Einstein and his life that you probably never knew, make you respect him even more. Things about Nikola Tesla that you never knew. We have evil characters in it as well, like Hitler. You'll learn things about the Nazis that you never knew, and some things that are really, really cool. So it's a real adventure book. 90% of it is real, and it's real science. And the three main heroes is a child who is initially labeled as autistic, the parents that take care of them, and all of that it really comes from, all the thousands of families and parents that I've worked with. It's an amalgamation of all of those stories and of every child that I've worked with, and the doctor who really helps this child really recover and become an Einstein level genius is a functional neurologist. And so it's modeled after me and all of us and all of my friends and colleagues. And it's us, it's what we do. And I don't think people ever see us in a light where they look at us like this heroic person, even though we are, right? Even though that's what we do. And, really he's a major part of the whole book throughout. He's like incredible educator in his knowledge of physics and science and brain science. And not only just, helping with disability, but in everything in general as a mentor to this kid. So it's a really cool book, really interesting book that is really all about functional neurology, but it also is about, life, and it's about historical events and all of that.
Oh, it's exciting. And your brother's written a couple books too, right?
Yeah, so this is my first nonfiction. I mean, I have 6 books that I've written. This is my 7th, actually. I have textbooks and chapters, but when I was younger, I used to do a lot of creative writing. My father was really into creative writing, and he was really into that, and he instilled that in us at a young age. But really, the story of how this book came about, it's kind of interesting, because a lot of this book is really also based on my personal life, because, my son, Ty, who is in New York Chiropractic College right now, when he was younger, he was, kind of on the autism spectrum a bit, meaning he was very bright and intelligent, but, he had trouble with social cues and with emotional regulation and some of those things. And eventually he went through one of my brain balance centers in his teenage years, and it really corrected it so that, he is the most compassionate person I know at this point. But like a lot of kids that have different issues early on, he didn't like reading. And, I knew reading was very important because he was very intelligent. And I knew he wanted to do things. And so in the midst of writing one of my books, I was trying to figure out ways to get him to read. So I got him into comic books, and he likes science, and he likes stories about famous scientists that I would tell him about, like Einstein or Tesla or Galileo or Newton. And he liked that stuff. So he was asking me one day about writing a book. And I said, are you interested in writing a book? And he said, I don't know, I might be. And I said, well, if you're going to write a book, you got to read books. You really need to. That's how I learned how to write a book, was reading all those textbooks. And so he said, well, I don't know how to do that. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we write a book together just for fun? And we'll just, we'll make up a story, and you'll be the hero of the story. And it'll be based on our family and our background, and your brother and sister will be in it. And it'll be about brain balance and the work that I do and functional neurology. And it'll have, people like Einstein and Tesla and other people in it. It'll be really cool, And he was like, yeah, that sounds really great. So he got excited about it. And so we started doing some research. We got some books out of the library, or we went down to a bookstore and got books on Tesla and Einstein and, different things about physics. And I've always known a lot about Einstein. And so that's where kind of the book evolved. So Ian Petrie is really based on Ty. He's kind of like the character. And people in the book, like the initial, we talk about the wedding and everything. It's really my wife's and I's wedding, and my mother actually sang at our wedding. And and a lot of this is based on, it's a doctor who has a functional neurologist who has an office in New York City. And obviously it's kind of based on me and what I do, but it's kind of a combination of everybody that I've ever known. And so that's how the story kind of evolved out of this. But it really grew because I really created a lot of complexity. And then my brother, I told him about it years ago. And, Ty, after a while, he had some knee injuries later on, and he got distracted. And so I just kind of put it down. And one day I was talking to my brother, because we both are really interested in historical fiction and things like evolution and science fiction and all this whole thing about like, ancient aliens and UFOs. We actually read the first book in like 1969, by Eric von Daniken. We always loved this stuff, and we like superheroes, and so we think a lot alike. So one day I was having dinner with him, and I said, I thought of a really cool story for a book. And he said, tell me about it. So I told him the story, and he went, wow, that is like such a cool story. He's like, you got to write that. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm in the midst of writing another book. And, I wrote 6 books in like 7 years. So it wasn't like I had a lot of time to write a novel, right? So after my last book, and, as you know, I work with people and talk to people about setting goals. And so last year, or like one of the ends of the year, I was talking about goal setting, and I had people just put goals up on Instagram or on Facebook page. And he wrote, I want to write Einstein Desk with my brother as his goal. So I looked at that and I went, oh, wow, that's really cool. And I wasn't writing a book now. I had time. And I just thought, just for me and my brother to do it together. To be honest with you, I never thought it would be published. I didn't think a publisher would pick it up. I didn't really care. I just thought it was a really good story. And mainly it was about, really writing with my brother. And my brother's written 3 fiction books already. He's a great poet. I mean, he's really talented, creative writer. And we've always been close, but this really brought us really close. And it was just fun. It was just so much fun to write together. And he really embellished the story greatly. I mean, and he's got a great writing style. And, it was just really a great experience to do it. But it did get published, and it is a great story. And So far the feedback has been good. I mean, since it came out, we've been on one of the top bestseller lists as far as novels or fiction and time travel. So it's pretty cool.
I love it. And you know, no better time than now to jump into a book for a lot
Yeah,
of people that are sitting at home and hanging
exactly.
out.
Exactly. You got time now, and it's a left brain stimulating thing, so it's good for your immune system. And it really makes you think about things. Like the book. The reason why Einstein's desk, the name, is because for me, I was always fascinated by Einstein. And I don't know if you've ever seen the picture of Einstein's desk the day after he died at Princeton University, but you should Google it. And it is a desk where he's got a blackboard behind him, and it is just a mess. I mean, it's got 1,000 papers all over the desk, all over the shelves. It's a classic right brain genius desk, right? And I remember thinking about it. Now, Einstein, at the end of his life, most people don't realize he was working on the unified theory of the universe, meaning he was trying to figure out and bring together general relativity with quantum mechanics. And he was trying to figure out the whole universe, right? Like how everything worked. And some people say he was close, some people say he wasn't. But, he was Einstein, right? If anybody was going to be able to figure it out, it was probably him. But he died, kind of suddenly. And so I always thought to myself, what if he figured it out? Like, what if at the last day he figured out the answer to the whole universe and it was there on the desk? Did anybody look? Did anybody go through those papers and say and understand what they meant, right? And, what would be the implications of that? Well, the implications of that is that if Einstein actually did figure out the unified theory, he would have also figured out time travel. Now, we can think and go, time travel, that's crazy. But Stephen Hawking, in his last book before he died, actually wrote that time travel is absolutely possible. And according to Einstein's theory, it's absolutely possible. There's no doubt about that, but we don't know how to do it. And, but if we ever figure out the unified theory, someday we might figure it out. So it is something that they actually recently imaged a black hole. And on the outskirts of the black hole, they saw a certain pattern, like a rim. And basically what that kind of shows is like a time warp, right? So there is all of this based on physics is actually possible. Now, if Einstein figured out the whole universe and he figured out time travel, that would also be the ultimate weapon, right? Time travel in the wrong hands would be the ultimate weapon. Now, Einstein was traumatized by the Manhattan Project and by the fact that he talked FDR into actually developing the atomic bomb that was dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And he swore that he would never allow anything he ever did before again to be used for a weapon. So, and he and Nikola Tesla had worked together years ago on something called the Philadelphia experiment. And they had a really bad experience with it, where they actually, by accounts, really created a tear in space and time. It's really cool if you read about it in the book. It's an actual real event that people say happened. And, Tesla had been screwed over by the government a lot as well. And so what happens is that in the book, what we think of is that, let's say Einstein figured it all out. Would he have actually told anybody? Because would he feel the world was ready right after World War II at that level for that level of information? Would he have trusted the government? And would he be sure that no one would turn it into a weapon, right? And so if he did figure it out, where would he have hid it? And so that's what Einstein's desk is all about. It's about the desk, and this young kid becomes obsessed with this desk, and he tries to figure out this answer, and then it takes you on this really cool journey from there.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I just Googled it. It was actually pretty cool. It says, if a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, of what then is an empty desk a sign? But yeah, it's definitely packed. I actually have, this is my little dorm room downstairs. I don't know if you can see him, but I have him hanging up.
Oh, there you go. Yep, there you go.
The picture with the tongue out.
Yep.
Well, so, I actually ordered it, but it got back ordered or delayed on Amazon because of all the stuff we're going through. But I know it is available on Kindle, right? You can.
Available on Kindle, and it's only like preliminary prices like under $3, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like 3 or 3.99.
Yeah. So yeah, you can get it on Kindle, and it's also on BarnesandNoble.com.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, Amazon is backed up because they're shipping toilet paper and
Yeah.
everything. So, but yeah, you can go to BarnesandNoble.com and you could get it pretty quickly because they don't have as much backlog because they only sell books. So,
Yeah.
not a big deal.
That's great. Yeah, I'll definitely be picking it up on the Kindle version. And then congrats again to you guys. I mean, I don't, I always text our friend Kyle. I'm like, how the heck does he have time for this stuff? When I saw you come out with another book, because every time, well, now I know you're not traveling as much because we can't, which is nice. There's nice parts about slowing down, but yeah, it's all about setting goals and keeping your mind and eyes focused on the prize. I always tell patients too, your mind, your brain or mind is a garden. You can, you got to plant some flowers, or you can plant some weeds. You got to plant the flowers. So
Right.
you got to
Yeah,
do that.
and a lot of people ask me that, how do you do it? How do you do all the things that you've done and keep on doing it? And um, and I have a lot of free time. I mean, I have a lot of free time with my family, and it's great. So it's really about the plan. It's all about the plan, and that's in that 3-hour workshop I gave everybody not only the tools of how to create a plan, but I literally make you create a plan the way I create my plan. And, if people really want to know how I do it, I actually gave it all the tools. And, when I initially did it, I kept the price really low because it wasn't about making money. It was about just getting people, but things have to have a value, right? So it was $250. The other day I told people that if they want to go on my website and go to, and do that workshop, I cut the price in half during this time to $125. And anybody can go on that. It's on my website. You can go to, Dr. Robert Melillo Life Plan. And it's just a 3-hour workshop that is the same as if I did it live. It just leads you step by step through it. And I literally, like I said, not only give you the tools, but as you go through this, I make you do it. You write it. You actually will come out after 3 hours with a plan, a written plan that you probably would have never done before. And once you do that and you see the power of it, you will never not do it again. But lots of times it's that first step. You got to make that first step. The first step is the hardest, and it's often the most important. So, if you really want to know how I did it, it's all right there. I just gave it to you. And all you got to do is follow the direction, man. And it's really powerful.
I love it. There's people chiming in about buying the book and being frustrated that there's a delay in shipment. But what I'll do is I'll post a link to that, and I'll probably pick one up myself for the 3-hour talk.
Yeah.
So we'll put that on the page here, and then I'll post some links to the books too.
Oh, it's great. If you do the workshop, and then if you want to come back on and you want to talk about it, if you have questions, or if you want to talk about, what you did, or so that other people understand it, because, sometimes you don't know what the questions people are going to have when they go through it until you go through it. So,
Sure.
if you do that, and I'll be happy to come back on and talk about it and answer any questions for anybody about it, because all I want to do is give the information out. All I want is I want people to be able to do what I do. I want to create an army of people that think like me and do that, because there's we talked about that. There's so much confusing message, even within functional neurology ourselves. And, there's so many confusing messages of people that are kind of, and you need to have a really singular vision to be successful, and I feel there's a lot of people with a lot of noise and a lot of different ways to go. And, you have to look though, and I don't mean this in an egotistical way, but there aren't many people in our world that have written as many books as I've had, that have been this successful, that have created a business or businesses as successful as I have, that have, done the lecturing and, done the scientific papers and the textbooks and the chapters in the textbooks and TV and radio. And, so, you gotta look at where the information's coming from, right? You gotta look at the person and look at what is their body of work, and then give the importance to that information more, right? Like you have to look at that. So people can have great information, but look at where the information's coming from. And it might sound really convincing, but you look and you say, how do I know that that's really that? Like, what has that person done to prove that opinion or that theory or that concept? And so that's it. I just think people need to look at that and understand where it's coming from. And I think my body of work speaks for itself over the past, 20, 30 years.
Oh, 100%. That's what, every time I talk to Kyle, who's one of our good friends, he said he'll get on the phone and he's just hilarious. He says, man, that guy's a machine. So you're a total machine. And
it's all about the plan, buddy. It's all about the plan. Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. Anybody out there, any student, anybody can do what I do. It's about just knowing how to do it, having a plan of action. That's what I put in that workshop. So anybody can do what I do. It's just a matter of being committed to it, and and that's it.
All right. Well, I'm committed to signing up, and then we're going to get back on and talk about it after I go through it.
Sounds great. I can't wait.
Cool. And then, we'll do another one soon. And just for, you mentioned this earlier, but we're all kind of going through some rough times, and, just talking to you actually makes me feel calmer and better about a lot of things. Can you just throw out any other recommendations that people could be doing at home, just to kind of get through these tough times, keep their brain focused?
You need to, like I said, entertainment and things. So one of the things I did, and I think it's a really good thing, I think I'm going to reactivate it again. I have a Facebook page called Better Than Good, the Science of Success and Happiness.
Great page.
I committed to doing it for about 2 years. And for 1 year straight, I committed that basically every day I was going to post a really positive video that I personally selected. And it wasn't long. I mean, usually maximum 5-7 minutes at the most. And give a positive message, an educational lesson that I've learned in my life, or try to give something out to people so that it will help them and usually relate to the video, right? And I started with a 30-day challenge, which was, it's almost impossible for most people to do something 30 days in a row, even if they like it. And the key to success, anybody successful that I've spoken to, and I have a lot of celebrities and people that I've worked with that are patients or I'm friends with, and they all say the same thing. I mean, it really is, there is a consistent kind of thing, and it's not about doing massive, huge things like writing a book per se. Writing a book is not about doing one big thing. It's about doing 1,000 little things consistently. And when you do that, you end up with a book, or you end up with a company, and it's about the small thing that you do consistently every day or all the time. It's the little things that form into habits. It's the habits that make you successful in life. And so a really good challenge for people is, studies have shown that if you can do something for 30 days in a row, it generally becomes a habit in your basal ganglia, which is where it lives, right? So, doing anything 30 days in a row is hard. So what I said to people was, just go on my website, click on a video, read the message, and then just put a number, put a number in the Facebook message of how many days in a row you've done it. Mm-hmm. 1, 2, and try to do it for 30 days. And if you fail, start over again, right? And so what happens is it's not easy to do that, even if you're watching a video. But I do that all the time. Like I run, like during this time, I'm exercising more. Like I'm just committing, I have the time, I'm going to run every single day. And as I do, if I run on my treadmill, I always watch a motivational video, or I watch a series of them in a row. And I'm telling you, man, I don't care what's going on in your life. You go on a treadmill, you run, and you watch a series of really kick butt, motivational videos in a row. You come off that treadmill ready to, kick some ass, no matter what, right? And that's it. You just immerse yourself in that. You do whatever you got to do to keep yourself on track, but it's about action. You can't sit back and wait and hope and wish and dream. You have to do it. You know, you have to do it, and you have to take action of it. That's the way our brain works. We don't just sit back and take sensory. We have acting senses where we go out and we actively sense our world, and that calibrates our brain. So now that sensory information means something, right? We don't just passively sit back and take in sensory information. It's about action. It's about doing something. So, you know, just do something. And even if you just do that, go for a walk and listen to motivational videos on YouTube, or just watch them, or go on my website. I have a whole year's worth, really 2 years worth of really awesome videos and messages, and just do that 30-day challenge. Just go on there and do that for 30 days. If you get through the next 30 days and you're worried about that and you're really focused on that, you're not going to be focused on your fear. You're not going to be focused on what you're afraid of. And you just keep on doing that. And if you do 30 days in a row, you're going to feel really good about yourself, and you're going to feel like you can do anything. And you created a new habit, a success habit that's really going to make a difference.
I love it. Use this time to build some better habits and build a better brain.
Exactly. Sit around, whine and cry, make excuses. It's all bullshit, right?
Yeah, my wife's tired of that.
No. Everybody that knows me knows that I can't stand excuses. I can't stand, there's always reasons, but the fact is, just do it, you know. And that's one of the things I say too. You do it, you do that, you know, each day in a row. And if you fail, you know, don't write an excuse. Don't say, well, I couldn't do it today because, you know, I had to go to the hospital. Doesn't make a difference. You didn't do it. Just start over. It doesn't matter. Don't make an excuse. You only make an excuse when you're preparing to quit something. You know that? Mm-hmm. That people don't realize that. Listen to yourself. And I tell people this. As soon as you start to make an excuse, don't make an excuse for anything. Don't ever make an excuse, because there's no reason. Just say, all right, you know, I made a mistake, or I didn't do it, or whatever. And let's just move on and do it and do better next time. The only people that need to make an excuse is when you're trying to make an excuse for quitting. If you keep on going, you don't need an excuse. You just keep on going, right? So just listen to yourself, and you listen. If you're making an excuse or a rationalization, just stop. Don't make an excuse. Don't ever. Just move on. Just go.
Love it. You're the man. Well, I can't thank you enough for your time, and we'll definitely be picking your brain more over here on Brain Chat.
My pleasure, Ryan. Okay, and I can't wait to hear your review. And the only thing I would ask people is that if you do get Einstein's Desk and you read it, you know, the main thing that keeps a book momentum going is really writing a review on Amazon. So please write a review. I really appreciate it greatly. I'll see it, obviously, and you know, it really makes a big difference. If we can get a lot of really positive reviews out there early on, that really is today the most important thing. And a lot of what I'm trying to do, Ryan, also is really pave the way for other people. Like if you want to write a book, or a student out there wants to write a book, if I write a book and it's successful, and I'm a functional neurologist or a chiropractor or psychology or whatever, it makes it easier for the next person. And that's part of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to pave a way and set an example and walk my talk. People come up to me and say, I want to write a book. And how do I do that? And so part of the way to do that is by just being the example and doing it, right? And I always say to people, you want to write a book, just freaking write a book, right? Anybody can do it. Do it. Write it.
No excuses.
No excuses. Just write the freaking book, man. You know, like, and if not, I also have coaching programs and things that will teach people how to do that. And, you know, it's a matter of just doing it. So part of what I'm trying to do is pave the way. So if people help me to achieve a certain level of success, then you know the way the business works, or any business works. They say, oh, okay, let me look at somebody else in that field that can do it. Another functional neurology person, you know, let's look at the book that they have to do. If it fails, then it makes it harder for the next guy, right? So that's what we're trying to do, or girl, of course.
Absolutely. Right. We'll definitely be posting all the positive reviews. So thank you so much. And I'll make sure to post all the links to everything once I get the video up.
Great. So, thank you, Ryan. Tell your wife I said hello.
Yes, sir.
Little boy, and congratulations on your, you know, on what you told me. And
thank you.